We live in the times where the world is an open economy, a global market. There is movement of goods and services and flow of capital and labor between countries. Balance of payments, or simply BOP as we know it, is a systematic mechanism to keep track of all financial interactions between residents of a country and the rest of the world in a defined time period. सिंपल सी डेफिनेशन है, विल बिल्ड ऑन दिस थ्रू द लेक्चर. इसको एक सिंपल बैंक अकाउंट के एग्जांपल से समझते हैं. हम सब लोग बैंक अकाउंट तो ऑपरेट करते हैं. जब हम कुछ खर्चा करते हैं, लाइक मेकिंग एन ऑनलाइन बिल पेमेंट और बाइंग समथिंग एंड मेकिंग अ पेमेंट फॉर इट, और इवन विड्रॉइंग कैश फ्रॉम द ATM, ये सारे एक्सपेंडिचर्स और विड्रॉल्स गो टू द डेबिट साइड ऑफ द अकाउंट, यानी अकाउंट से पैसा निकाला गया. Similarly, when we get a payment into our account, like our salary credit into the account, or interest earned on fixed deposits, or a payment received from a friend or relative, or even cash deposit into the account, ये सारे deposits go to the credit side of the account, यानी account में पैसा आया. At the end of the day, we add all the credits and subtract all the debits and get to know the balance available in the account. कुछ ऐसा ही काम करता है balance of payments. All countries maintain an account called the BOP account. Payments coming into the country are marked under the credit side and payments going out of the country are marked on the debit side. Any resident of the country, including companies, whether private or government, or even the government itself, when they buy anything from anyone outside the country or sell anything to anyone outside the country, it gets tracked through the balance of payments mechanism. Now, BOP primarily has two main accounts, current account and capital account. There has been a revision, financial account, which has been added in the latest BOP manual by IMF, but for all practical purposes, it is considered as a subhead of capital account. We'll come to it. All accounting is done through inflows and outflows in these two accounts. Now consider current account as an everyday running account, जिसमें देश की रोज़ की इनकम आ रही है और जिसमें से रोज़ के खर्चे किए जा रहे हैं. Remember, the income and expenditures we're talking about here are in context of country's business with the rest of the world, not within the country. Now, this account keeps track of four things. Number one, trade in goods, that is import and export of goods, also called merchandise. For example, crude oil, gold, diamonds, electronics, etc. Inflows, receipts, credit all mean the same thing, that is money coming into our country, and outflows, payments, debit all mean money going out from our country. So, imports are tracked on the debit side because when we import something, we make payment for it. Money goes out of our country. Exports, on the other hand, are tracked on the credit side because when we export something, we receive payment for it and money comes into our country. Second component of current account is services, that is import and export of services. Example, software and technology, banking and finance, transportation, shipping services, etc. अब क्या होता है सर्विसेज? हाउ डू यू इम्पोर्ट एंड एक्सपोर्ट सर्विसेज? मान लीजिए कि हमारी एक इंडियन कंपनी इन्फोसिस ने एक बैंकिंग सॉफ्टवेयर बनाया और वो सॉफ्टवेयर एक US के बैंक को सेल किया. वो सॉफ्टवेयर, उसकी इंस्टॉलेशन, ऑल काइंड ऑफ टेक्निकल सपोर्ट एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, ये सब सर्विसेज हैं एंड विल बी कैटेगराइज्ड एज एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ सर्विस सिंस एक इंडियन कंपनी एक फॉरेन यूजर को प्रोवाइड कर रही है. वी विल रिसीव पेमेंट फॉर दिस विच विल गो टू द इनफ्लोज क्रेडिट साइड ऑफ द अकाउंट. एक और एग्जाम्पल देखिए, हम कहीं बाहर घूमने जाते हैं किसी दूसरे देश में और वहाँ की टूर्स एंड ट्रैवल सर्विसेज यूज़ करते हैं, होटल्स यूज़ करते हैं, थीम पार्क्स विजिट करते हैं, वहाँ के टिकट्स परचेज करते हैं. वी आर यूजिंग द टूरिज्म एंड हॉस्पिटैलिटी सर्विसेज ऑफ दैट कंट्री एंड पेइंग फॉर सच सर्विसेज. दिस इज कैटेगराइज्ड एज इम्पोर्ट ऑफ सर्विसेज फॉर अस. All payments made by us in this regard are listed on the debit side of the current account. Balance of trade, very important. It is in this context that we see the often repeated terms trade deficit and trade surplus. So, if our imports of goods are greater than exports, then there will be trade deficit. If imports of goods are less than exports, then there will be trade surplus. If imports are equal to exports, then we call it as balance of trade. In many places, you will notice that balance of trade equation includes goods as well as services. It is not wrong since trade in services has increased many-fold since the liberalization of economy. In fact, trade in services now strongly supplements the goods trade in international business, with IT technology and software services leading from the front. NCERT though still refers to it as trade in goods. For the sake of this lecture, we'll go with the NCERT definition. Here's the balance of trade data of India with its top 5 trading partners. As you can see, barring US, it runs a trade deficit with all the other 4 countries. With China, we have an overwhelming trade imbalance. Now, what is the significance of understanding balance of trade? Balance of trade is an important indicator to assess a country's dominance in bilateral or multilateral trade. For example, a country running trade surplus with another country can exert greater negotiation power in setting up trade agreements and forming MOUs and bilateral treaties. But contrary to popular notion, trade deficit is not always a bad thing. A country may be importing more raw material to produce more and hence increase its potential exports in the future. This may ultimately finance the deficit in future. If a country becomes net exporter, meaning it exports more than it imports, तो current account में net inflow होगा, यानी surplus. This surplus can be used to shore up RBI's forex reserves. RBI उस surplus को use करके foreign exchange reserves को बढ़ा सकता है. Coming back to the components of current account, next is income, also called net factor income because this income is generated through the investments in factors of production such as land, labor and capital. For example, compensation of employees, dividends from shares of foreign companies, interest earnings from loans, deposits, bonds, income from foreign investments, profits from subsidiaries of companies located abroad, etc. We call this net income because it is net of inflow and outflow. Income of residents of our country abroad minus income of foreign residents in our country. For example, say an Indian resident, can be a company or government also, has a house property in US that is rented out there. Let's say annual rent received from that property is $1,200. So, credit side. On the other hand, a US resident has bought shares of an Indian company and has received annual dividend of $1,500 in the year. So, this is a payment that has gone out, so on the debit side. So, the net income is negative of $300. The fourth component under current account is transfer payments. All unilateral payments such as grants, remittances, gifts and aid, etc. These are called unilateral payments because these are one way and there is nothing in return for these payments. Unlike goods or merchandise as they are referred to, which are visible, tangible products, services, transfers and income are classified as invisibles or intangibles. You cannot touch, feel, see them like goods. Now, let's see an example of current account transactions. Suppose we import crude oil from US worth $2,000. हमारा import bill $2,000 का बन गया, तो 2,000 डेबिट साइड में आ गया, करंट अकाउंट से पैसा निकाला गया. सपोज हम कुछ एक्सपोर्ट्स भी करते हैं यूएस को, तो जी हमने पेट्रोलियम रिफाइन करके कुछ उसमें से यूएस को एक्सपोर्ट कर दिया. मान लीजिए $1,200 का एक्सपोर्ट करा. ये 1200 अपनी क्रेडिट साइड में आ जाएगा क्योंकि यूएस हमें उसकी पेमेंट देगा. ट्रेड डेफिसिट हो गया $800 का. इन अदर वर्ड्स इंपोर्ट्स आर ग्रेटर देन एक्सपोर्ट्स बाय $800. सर्विसेज की बात करते हैं. Suppose an Indian company, Infosys, buys Google's cloud storage and data center services in US and pays $1,000 in the year. Import of services कितने का हुआ? $1,000 का. Okay, another transaction. An Indian BPO provides call center services to Bank of America. Now, Indian resident giving service to a foreign resident. इस केस में क्या हुआ? Export of services. मान लीजिए $500 का. Now, let's see income transactions. An Indian resident holds बॉन्ड्स इशूड बाय यूएस फेडरल रिजर्व. बॉन्ड्स पे इंटरेस्ट आएगा, हमारी इनकम हो गई, मान लीजिए $100 मिले. ऑन दी अदर हैंड मान लो कि एक यूएस रेजिडेंट इंडियन गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज़ काइंड ऑफ बॉन्ड्स होल्ड करता है, देन ही और शी विल अर्न इंटरेस्ट ऑन दोज बॉन्ड्स. ये उसकी इनकम हो गई जिसकी पेमेंट हमको करनी पड़ेगी, तो हमारे करेंट अकाउंट में डेबिट एंट्री. मान लीजिए ये भी $100 की है, $100 का डेबिट. फाइनली let's look at transactions of transfer payment. Money remitted that is sent by Indians living abroad $300 मान लीजिए. और अगर फॉरेन रेजिडेंट्स जो इंडिया में काम कर रहे हैं अगर वो अपने देश पैसा भेजें तो डेबिट ट्रांजैक्शन बनेगी. तो टोटल करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट हो गया $1,000 का. नाउ मैनी पीपल कंफ्यूज ट्रेड डेफिसिट विथ करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट. बोथ आर कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट थिंग्स. While trade deficit is only due to trade in goods, current account is a broader perspective and includes services, income and transfers as well, apart from goods. More often than not, trade deficit is the major contributor, if not the sole contributor, to current account deficit. A country can also run into current account deficit if it is an attractive investment destination for foreign investors. More they will invest in the country, more will be the obligation of recipient country to service payback income generated on those investments. कैसे भाई, मान लीजिए अपने देश में फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स ने इन्वेस्टमेंट करी, जैसे कि यूएस के एक इन्वेस्टर ने एक इंडियन कंपनी में 5% स्टेक परचेज किया, यानी 5% इक्विटी खरीदी। अब वो इंडियन कंपनी उस इन्वेस्टर को हर साल उन 5% शेयर्स पर डिविडेंड पे करेगी। कहाँ से जाएगा पैसा? करेंट अकाउंट में, इनकम पेमेंट्स हेड में डेबिट होगा, है ना। या मान लीजिए किसी इंडियन रेजिडेंट ने बाहर के किसी इन्वेस्टर से लोन लिया, मान लीजिए मैंने यूएस के किसी इन्वेस्टर से लोन ले लिया। अब उस लोन का इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट हर साल उसको करना पड़ेगा जब तक लोन नहीं चुका देते। इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स आर अगेन अ डेबिट ऑन करेंट अकाउंट अंडर द इनकम पेमेंट्स हेड। गुड सो फार? अगर कुछ भी डाउट है अभी तक तो एक रिवाइंड मारो और यहाँ तक का वीडियो फिर से देखो। चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं। लेट्स सी द इक्वेशन फॉर करेंट अकाउंट बैलेंस। सो करेंट अकाउंट बैलेंस इज इक्वल टू एक्सपोर्ट्स माइनस इंपोर्ट्स प्लस income plus transfer payments. Now in our example we were running a current account deficit of $1,000. Remember? It means that our expenditure was more than our earnings. इन $1,000 के गैप को पूरा करने के लिए क्या करें? Come back to the same bank account example that we started with. अगर आपके खर्चे आपकी कमाई से ज़्यादा हैं तो आप वो एक्सेस खर्चा कहाँ से पूरा करेंगे? आप अपने डिपॉजिट्स की तरफ देखेंगे कि कोई डिपॉजिट ब्रेक करके उसमें से पैसा निकाल लिया जाए, या क्रेडिट कार्ड से पे कर दिया जाए विच इज़ काइंड ऑफ अ लोन, या किसी दोस्त रिलेटिव या बैंक से लोन ले लिया जाए। यही काम करता है बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट्स का कैपिटल अकाउंट। कैपिटल अकाउंट सर्विसेज द डेफिसिट और यूटिलाइजेज द सरप्लस ऑफ द करेंट अकाउंट। यानी अगर करेंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट है तो कैपिटल अकाउंट से पैसा लेंगे और डेफिसिट पूरा करेंगे, और अगर करंट अकाउंट सरप्लस हो गया तो कैपिटल अकाउंट में डाल देंगे। That is, any current account deficit must be financed by a capital account surplus and reverse. Broadly, capital account is a measure of capital of a country vis-a-vis rest of the world. In simple words, it is a net reserve of assets, investments and liabilities held by a country abroad. When I say country, it includes all residents of the country. Just like the current account, capital account also records transactions on debit and credit sides. Purchase of assets is a debit entry on the capital account. So for example, if Tatas buy a Jaguar and Land Rover in the UK, I mean the company, it is marked as a debit transaction on the capital account as money is flowing out of the country. Sale of assets is a credit side entry on the capital account. If a British telecom company buys an Indian telco, it will be marked on the credit side as money will flow into the country. There are two main elements through which capital account measures these international asset transactions. Investments जैसे कि direct investments such as FDI, foreign direct investment, retained earnings of companies, portfolio investments such as FII like used by mutual fund houses. So net, India getting inflow of investments will go to the credit side of capital account, and outflow of investments from India will go to the debit side of the account. The second type of transaction that you will see in the capital account will be of borrowings. India lending to another country which will be debit on the capital account, or India borrowing from another country which will be credit on the capital account. भाई lend करेंगे तो पैसा जाएगा डेबिट साइड, और borrow करेंगे तो पैसा आएगा क्रेडिट साइड. Now let's look at some capital account transactions. Remember Facebook investing $5.7 billion in Reliance Jio and acquiring almost 10% stake? Well, that was an FDI transaction, foreign direct investment. A foreign company investing directly in Indian company and buying equity stake. Since investment money is coming into our country, so the transaction will go to the credit side of capital account. Next, Tata's bought Jaguar and Land Rover from Ford Motor Company for $2.3 billion. Batao, shabash. Again, FDI, but this time money goes out of our country, so debit side of capital account. So next example, FIIs, mutual funds, insurance companies buying government of India bonds or government securities. क्या हो रहा है इसमें? First of all, what are FIIs? These are foreign institutional investors who invest in a portfolio of companies. किसी one particular company में invest नहीं करते. Like Facebook investing in Reliance Jio was an FDI. One particular company में direct investment था. And this FII is like mutual fund houses who invest in a portfolio of companies. काफ़ी सारी companies में एक साथ पैसा लगाया. So क्या हो रहा है इस particular case में? Investment is coming into India. So credit side transaction in the capital account. Next, इंडियन म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड पेंशन फंड्स इन्वेस्टिंग अब्रॉड. नाउ इस केस में FII ट्रांजैक्शन हो रही है बट मनी इज गोइंग आउट, सो डेबिट साइड ट्रांजैक्शन इन द कैपिटल अकाउंट. नेक्स्ट, IMF or World Bank giving loans to India. Remember I said borrowing is also one form of transaction in the capital account. So in this case borrowing is happening, India is borrowing from abroad. So credit side transaction in the capital account. हमारे पास पैसा आ रहा है, लोन ले रहे हैं तो हमारे पास पैसा आ रहा है. Now we hear about funding rounds in startups. सब लोगों ने सुना होगा स्टार्टअप का सीरीज A, सीरीज B, सीरीज C, सीड फंडिंग, वेंचर कैपिटल फंड्स इन्वेस्टिंग इन स्टार्टअप्स. कैन यू थिंक ऑफ एन एग्जाम्पल? Alibaba investing in Paytm. क्रेडिट साइड ट्रांजैक्शन इन द कैपिटल अकाउंट. अलीबाबा चाइनीज़ इन्वेस्टर था जिसने पेटीएम में पैसा लगाया, तो पैसा हमारे देश में आया, इन्वेस्टमेंट हमारे देश में आई, सो क्रेडिट साइड ऑफ द कैपिटल अकाउंट. खैर द लेटेस्ट ऑन दिस इज, एज यू माइट नो, is that Alibaba has now sold off its entire stake in Paytm and has exited. So now this would have been a debit transaction in capital account, investment capital leaving our country. Now coming back to our current account and capital account transactions. Let's list the capital account transactions now. An Indian company invests $400 in a Silicon Valley startup. Of course, these amounts are abysmal only for example purposes. Investments usually are in millions and billions of dollars, so this is only for explaining purposes. An Indian company investing $400 in a Silicon Valley startup. FII is investing $1,400 in Indian equity funds, credit side. So total capital account balance 1000 positive, which is net inflow, which is surplus in the capital account. So you can see that our current account had a deficit of $1000, capital account had a surplus, so it balances each other. So when the current account deficit is entirely financed by capital account without any reserve movements, it means that the country is in a balance of payments equilibrium. So current account balance plus capital account balance is equal to 0. Balance में होगा equation, balance of payments equilibrium. Now what if capital account is also not able to fully meet the current account deficit? अगर करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट है, कैपिटल अकाउंट से हमने काफ़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स ली, नेट इनफ्लो हुआ, बट स्टिल वी आर नॉट एबल टू मीट द करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट. सपोज नेट कैपिटल इनफ्लो in our example was only $900 and not $1000. Now we need $100 more. Come back to the same बैंक अकाउंट एग्जाम्पल. आपने सारी अपनी FDs भी तोड़ दी, आपने लोन्स भी ले लिए, फिर भी आप अपने बैंक अकाउंट से एक्सेस खर्चे की भरपाई नहीं कर पा रहे. देयर इज वन मोर रिसोर्स दैट विल नाउ कम टू आवर हेल्प. You have Reserve Bank, which is a custodian of all reserves, gold, forex, SDRs, etc. RBI will sell some of the forex and fulfill the deficit. In English, there is a metaphor for this situation, selling the family silver. And if the reverse happens, that is there is a current account surplus, then it gets transferred to RBI and it utilizes it to raise the forex reserves in its coffers. So now we add one more element, forex, to the BOP equation. Equation becomes current account balance plus capital account balance plus forex is equal to 0. इस equation में एक final element और डाल देते हैं, E&O, errors and omissions. इतना बड़ा देश का अकाउंट चला रहे हैं, कुछ गलतियां भी हो सकती हैं, ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि सब ट्रांजेक्शन्स करेक्टली कैप्चर ना हो, तो ये जो डिफरेंस रह जाता है ये हम E&O हेड में डालते हैं और BOP इक्वेशन बैलेंस कर देते हैं. नाउ previously financial account and capital account were treated together. IMF separated the two in its last BOP manual release. Now capital account covers all capital transfers and acquisition disposal of non-financial assets, while financial account takes care of all investments in financial assets including equity and debt, FDI, FII, borrowing, etc. ये सब फाइनेंशियल अकाउंट में जाएंगे. RBI publishes the BOP data in both formats, capital and financial account separately and financial account as a subhead under capital account. आप दोनों तरीके की स्टेटमेंट्स RBI पे जाके, RBI की वेबसाइट पे जाके देख सकते हैं. नाउ दिस कंप्लीट्स द टॉपिक, बट डेटा एनालिसिस का ज़माना है, थोड़ा सा रियल डेटा की तरफ चलते हैं और देखते हैं हमने क्या सीखा. लेट्स क्विकली ग्लांस थ्रू recent BOP data published by RBI. This BOP data is for the first 3 quarters of FY 22-23. अप्रैल टू दिसंबर तक का डेटा है. देयर इज़ अ मर्चेंडाइज ट्रेड डेफिसिट, मर्चेंडाइज रिमेंबर गुड्स, देयर इज़ अ मर्चेंडाइज ट्रेड डेफिसिट ऑफ $214 बिलियन. यस, यू हर्ड दैट राइट, $214 बिलियन का डेफिसिट. Invisible items, namely services, income and transfers, are contributing a surplus of $146 billion. Total current account deficit $67 billion. Now net credit to capital account $53.5 billion. इसको net inflow to capital account भी कह सकते हैं. Errors and omissions $1.1 billion. Still बचा कितना deficit of $14.5 billion. So RBI sells $14.5 billion from the forex reserves and balances the BOP equation. So जब हम सुनते हैं कि foreign exchange reserves हमारे पास कम हो गए या बढ़ गए, so this is one of the reasons through which it happens. I hope you liked this lecture, learned from it. See you in the next. Bye.